All right, got everything cleaned up. I'm going to assemble these U-joints off camera. The only original part we're using is this yoke here, which goes into the pinion gear. This is a replacement. The original one was worn out, and I did pick up a fine spline yoke for the input, which is more desirable. All right, so public service announcement. The original U-joints are available from Volvo. It's kind of hit and miss whether you can find them or not. You will pay dearly for them. Most of the ones that you see are going to be external snap ring. These are internal snap ring, which are the most common. Okay. I used to prefer the Spicer U-joint. There's your number right there. Problem is, Spicer doesn't make the original style anymore. They've substituted this style, which has a grease fitting on the cap. Okay, that's no good. In my opinion, it's no good because that grease fitting is going to stick out. No matter where you put it, it's going to stick out somewhere. And this whole U-joint assembly is inside rubber bellows, and there's not a lot of clearance. And I wouldn't trust that grease fitting sticking out. They do make grease fittings that are pretty flush that use a needle. Yeah, so they do make a grease fitting that's pretty flush, and it uses a needle and a little check ball where you can grease them that way. So that might be an alternative. The other thing you could do is, if you really want to go with the Spicers, you could probably buy 3 U-joints and then just swap out the 2 caps that have the grease fitting, and then they're going to be sealed at that point, not greasable. But nobody greases these things anyways. As long as you flush them out, put good grease in them, probably be okay that way. So what I've been using lately are these Neepcos. They're made in USA. There's your part number right there. These are good. If you can find these are great. They work fine. Although I couldn't find any recently, so what I did is I bought some Moog. Okay, these are supposed to be the equivalent, and we're going to find out. All right. Well, unfortunately, these Moog 315Gs are not going to work. I'm not going to use them. I did locate some of the Neepcos, and I've got them on their way. So as soon as those get there, or as soon as they get here, we will continue. All right, I was able to locate a couple of the correct U-joints. These are some new old stock. I got them off eBay, and they are Neepco brand, made in the US. I mean, they're old. They've probably been sitting on a shelf a long time, but still in the factory sealed package. And I'm going to flush out the existing grease and put new synthetic marine grease in them, which you should always do. Okay. Yeah, so that was a good find. We finished reassembling the U-joint assembly. Came out really good. It's ready to go. And we also got all our housings cleaned up and repainted. So we're ready to start building it back up. I'm going to start by putting the shift cover back together, reassembling it. The first thing I noticed here, and this is pretty common, we got a little bit of wear and some burrs where the detent pin rides in here. Okay, so I'm going to clean those up with a needle file. All I did was just knock the burrs off, then I polished it with some 320 grit, blew it out, and then wiped it down with some solvent. So I've got several of these. I don't know what brand they are, but they look like a pretty good seal, and they're a double lip seal. They're not a double spring. The only place you'll find a double spring is if you buy a genuine Volvo seal. But these work fine. These are a tight fit, so I always give it a little thin coat of grease. I'll wipe that off. And then I fill the, between the two lips, I fill that with grease also. Yeah, we're going to put the spring side down. A little bit of 90 weight gear lube. Let's put a little down in here also. Okay. Alright, so we got to put in our pin, and remember we have one good side and one slightly worn side, so I'm going to turn it that way. And be sure to line up. Okay, right there. Double check. Looks good. Little roll pin. Okay, good. I put a little grease on our detent area there just to keep that lubricated. Yeah, because we're not going to be putting any oil in this drive, and we want to be able to manipulate it and test it. Alright, got a new O-ring. I just buy industrial O-rings. These are 3mm by 69mm, Una N70. I mean, for you guys, just buy the kit. You can buy a kit that comes with all the seals and O-rings and everything. And then I don't use the non-hardening sealer on these. I just grease them. Put in our O-ring. Grease these surfaces a little bit, just to kind of keep the corrosion down. Alright, we're not going to put in our shifting fork or spring until we're ready to actually install this. Alright, we're going to set this aside. This is our brand new bearing. It's been sitting on the shelf for a long time, and it's probably been opened, so I'm going to give it a good cleaning, good flushing, because I don't know if any contaminants have gotten in there or not, so you don't want to take a chance. Alright, we've got everything cleaned up. Our bearings have been flushed, cleaned, and lightly coated with oil. Keep those covered up. We don't want any contaminants getting in there. We've got to replace the bearing cup for the outboard bearing here. The inboard one is still serviceable. We're going to leave that one alone. A note on this, the inboard bearing cup, there's an oil deflector. If you guys can see it or not, it's just a little not stainless steel, but just a steel ring that goes behind this bearing cup. So if you're going to replace this one, just be aware of that. So we're going to be replacing this cup. It's just like doing wheel bearings. We're just going to tap the bearing cup out, and I use a chisel. Now don't freak out. I've annealed the point on this chisel so it's nice and soft. And I like the shape, it can get in there a lot easier. Alright, so we're going to tap that out right now. Alright, I just did a quick cleaning on here and inspection looks good. I'm going to put a little bit of oil surface here just to help that bearing race go in. It's a pretty tight fit. It's going to need a little bit of help. Okay, I've got one of these bearing drivers. I've never been crazy about it, but let's see if we can at least use it just to get it started. Does help you start it straight. Okay. All right. Enough of that thing. Going in much better now. The first part it usually tries to bind a little bit until it gets good contact. Okay, it's starting to ring solid now. Looks like we're there. Yep. Just going to give it a couple insurance hits. Alright, we're all the way down. I'm going to give it one more quick flushing just to make sure that we didn't get any chips in there. Okay, gave this a quick cleaning. Everything looked good. Yeah, especially if you're using a brass punch, because brass will fragment and little pieces will come off. You want to make sure you get all those out of there. Alright, we're going to put a little oil on this bearing race. Okay, so we've got our pinion. Put some oil on that bearing. We're going to put a little here also to help that other bearing press on. Okay, that's going to go in there like so. Okay, and then our new bearing gets pressed on. Now if you're doing a 290A or DP or one of the newer ones, there's a crush sleeve that goes in between the bearings, but these older ones don't use that. Alright, so that's going to go on just like that, and now we head out to the press. Okay, we're getting set up out at the press. I got a supervisor here making sure I do everything right. Alright, we're going to need that guy. And we're going to need this one. Get it ready. I don't think we're going to need a spacer. My supervisor already caught me trying to make a mistake, so we need this one because that center shaft is going to extend through the bearing, so you got to have a hollow adapter here. Okay, there we go. Make sure it's centered. Spacer block, and we're ready. Check our alignment. Okay. Now we want to go just until we make contact. Okay, we're right there. Okay. Now, we've got to preload this bearing. And right now, we have really no resistance, so we're going to go till we feel a little bit of turning resistance. Okay, I got a little bit right there. Okay, now, we've got to set up to measure that. We'll be right back. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a string, masking tape, tape this string onto our bearing housing, bearing box. Make sure that we don't get it on the gear. And we're going to wrap this string around. You want to get plenty of turn so that you get some good friction. Okay. Then my assistant Ethan here handing me we're using a luggage scale. You could use a fish scale. I'm going to go to pounds. Let's see. Not temperature. Kilograms. There we go, pounds. Alright, so what we're looking for is about, hopefully you guys can see, this is probably going to be off camera, but we're going to be testing our rotating resistance while it's rotating, not the breakaway. And we're looking for between 4 pounds and 8 pounds. Since we have one old bearing and one new bearing, I'm going to kind of go middle range, so roughly 6 pounds. Okay, so we're definitely low right now, so I'm going to give it just a little bit more press. Okay, that's still below 1 pound. Just have to make sure we're actually recording. Okay, I'm going to give a little bit more. There's about 3 pounds. Okay. And it's going to give it just a fraction more. Okay. Let me do that again. It looked like about 4 pounds. Make sure that we're zeroing. Okay, zeroing. Okay. That's about just a little over 4, about 4.3 pounds. Okay, now what I want to do, I'm going to let off on the pressure. Because there's probably going to be some spring back. And let's see what we have again. It's still about 4.5. Okay, we're getting close to where we want to be. Give it just a tiny bit more. And a tiny bit more. I don't think it did anything yet. 4.5. Okay, tell you what. I'm going to release the pressure again. I don't think we're going to go any farther. I just want to see if it stays there without any pressure on it. Okay, we've got no pressure. I'm just going to hold it with my hand. Try not to let it fall. That's not going to work. Okay, I'm just going to put enough just to keep it from moving. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, here we go. That was about 4.3. Oops. Okay, that was like 4.6. just check it one more time. I'm going to make sure that we're backed off enough. Okay, yeah. That was like 4.47. I think we're going to call that good. The danger is if you go too far, then you got to flip it around, press it back the other way. Okay. We're going to take this out of here and head back to the workbench. So the order of operations next is going to be important because if you're following the service manual, you're going to get in trouble. So eventually our clamp ring, let's look at this little pin, there's an alignment pin right there. Let me turn that so you guys can see it. So eventually our clamp ring is going to be installed like that onto the bearing box. There we go. My helper's helping there. Okay. And then the U-joint assembly will go in afterwards. But if you look at the book, they show you putting the U-joint assembly in, or the yoke assembly. Well, there's also our washer that goes in there. We'll talk about that in a second. And then putting in the bolt and torquing everything down. So basically, what you would have is the bearing box attached, if I can get the splines to line up, to the U-joint assembly. Well, there's a slight problem with that. This will not fit through here. Okay, so if you do it by the book, you're going to be in trouble. All right. But we do want to do a few things to our bearing box before we get to that stage. So we've got our preload where we want it. This is the seal washer, and there's a recess in here where these shims go, and we've got to check those shims. So this validates the preload. So when this is bolted together with the U-joint, the shims take up the right amount of space so that we don't add or subtract from our preload. So we're going to have to measure that. We've also got a seal to put in here. Okay, so we want to do our measuring first, put the seal in, and then we'll put the clamp ring in and the U-joint assembly and so forth. Okay, so this seal washer is pretty worn. We're not going to use it. I just happen to have a brand new original one, and there's the part numbers. So let's get that out. All right, so now we've got to figure out our shim sizes that go underneath the seal washer. And we've got to do that with a depth gauge, depth mic, and these are a pain to read because they read in reverse, essentially. So what I like to do, I take a reading. We're reading the difference between the back of the bearing and the shaft extension here. And we're using this surface here as our reference. So let's get a reading here. And it's really easy to get confused on these. So I always take a pair of regular digital calipers and do a sanity check. Okay, make sure I'm holding it right. Okay, 551.5 thousandths. And I'm looking here. Okay, it's a little different here. This looks like it's 553. Let me just check it again. Okay, and yeah, 553. So I'm going to go with the 553, and I'm going to measure that in several locations. $553.5, and I'm writing these down. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the shaft that's sticking out. I've taken a series of 4 readings off the 2 different depths, averaged them out, subtracted the difference, so I've got 121 and 5/10 thousandths difference. Or that's the height of our shaft stick out. Now we need to measure the depth of this recess in our washer here, which is pretty easy to do. It's just 1 reading.
Okay.
All right, so Ethan, my supervisor over here, is helping me check the math. So we came up with, by measuring the 2 different offsets here, we came up with 121.5 thousandths, or 5/10 of a thousandths. And then we measured our depth of our recess here. We've got 143 thousandths. We subtracted the 2. We came up with a difference of 21 and 5/10 thousandths. So we could probably round that up to 22 thousandths. Would be the thickness of shims that we need to add. And then it's nice when this happens. So here's our shims that we took out. I had to replace one of them. And when I added up all the shims that came out, it comes up to 22 thousandths. So it rarely does it come out that exact, but I mean, that's nice when the numbers match. So we can put all our original shims right back in there. We'll be good to go. Next, we want to put in our seal. These fit really tight, so let me grease that. Yeah, they go in really tight, so you want to give it a little bit of grease to help it go in. Rarely do they ever go straight in. Keep working down the high side. Alright, looks like we're there. Snap rings next. I like to line up the opening on the snap ring with this pin. That way the opening will be at the bottom. In case you ever get any water in there, it gives it a spot to drain out rather than just sitting there and rusting. Just making sure. Yep. Just looking to make sure that it's engaging the groove all the way around. Alright, that looks good. Okay. And then while you got your grease out, I always load the seal. Between the 2 seal lips, I like to load that with grease. Next, we're going to do a shim check. So, before this assembles together, like such, we got to put our shims back in. But we're going to just verify them right now. Okay, clamp ring side. Because when we do the final assembly, we're going to put sealer on the O-rings and on some of these surfaces. Flip it this way. So I did clean these shims and I oiled them up. Okay, I'm putting the thinnest one toward the bottom there. Okay, so those 2 go there. And those are the original ones that came out. Alright, this is going to go on here. Like that. And then you got shims on this side that set the pinion depth, which are these 2. Okay, so let's put those on. We're just doing this just for a check. Okay, same deal here. Okay, we got them in there. All right, so what? This side sets the pinion depth. The other ones that we did on the other side sets the clamping force. So when this mates up with the rest of the housing, the idea is the bearing box will be clamped to the clamp ring in the housing. So you're taking up enough space so that you leave some clamping force. And the way I'm going to check that, I just take a straight edge with everything assembled, lay my straight edge on here, and you want it to, let me bring you guys down lower here. Okay, hopefully I got you low enough where you can see. So I'm just laying my straight edge on top of the shims, and what I'm looking for is that we have a little bit of space. See how the scale is rocking? Can you see that? I think the spec is between 1 and 2 thousandths for clamping interference. So we'll check it all the way around, make sure everything's setting down. Yeah, so we got a little bit of rock there. So our shim stack up and that flange, it's sitting proud of the housing. Same thing on this side, right? And these are the original shims. So, it's the original clamp ring and bearing box. So I mean, it should work out because we didn't change anything. Okay, yeah. See, we got some rock. Okay, so, and just eyeballing it, it looks like, yeah, between 1 and 2 thousandths. Okay, I guess we should check the last one also. Oops. Yeah, a little bit of rock. Okay. If we had to adjust it, of course we don't know, and we're going to assume that our pinion depth is going to be correct because we didn't change anything. If we didn't have enough clamping, we would take this apart and we would add some thickness to this side. Or if we had too much, we could take it away from this side. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do, we haven't put our O-rings in here yet. I don't want to get these shims mixed up. I'm going to put these shims back in their little baggies because I'm going to use sealer when this goes together. I don't want to do it right now. I want to do it just before final assembly. Before we start our assembly, let's get our shim calculations done. Alright, so on the back of the housing we got a B83, I'm writing these down, B83, and a C88. Okay, this is our top gear. Got a -10. We're going to write that down. All right, and then the bottom gear, that's also a -10. All right, I'm recording this with my phone. It's just easier than trying to do a screen capture. So over here, you can put in your model number and your serial number. It does absolutely nothing for the calculation. It's just a placeholder for you. Okay, here's our -10 for the lower gear. Here's our C value plugged in here. There's our -10 for the upper reverse gear. And there's our 83 for the B value. And then it just automatically calculates your shim thickness, both in millimeters and in inches. So I'm going to do a print screen and we'll double check our shims. Okay, well, this doesn't happen very often. Usually they come out pretty close. But according to the calculations, we should have a 3/1000 and a 5/1000 shim pack. And we've got a 13, and if we add these together, a 13. They're both 13. So that's quite a bit different. Now, on units that somebody else has worked on, that wouldn't surprise me at all. But this unit, it appeared that it had never been opened up before since it was built at the factory. So, the calculation is a theoretical calculation to get you where you need to be on your gear setup. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it back together with the shims that came out. And I hate to do it, but we'll have to do a tooth pattern contact check. I think it's going to be fine, but yeah, it's a pain to do that. But I think we're going to have to just to sleep better at night. Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah. Yeah. Most of the time, this gets you within a couple thou, anyways, and usually you just say, okay, good enough, right? But yeah, they may have noticed something at the factory when they were doing the original build where they needed to do some adjusting. So, okay, well, there you go. I want to get these cone clutches deglazed before we get the final assembly started. These aren't too bad, and you can't feel anything at all as far as wear. It is glazed. The brass cone clutch itself, these usually don't get glazed, but I think I'm going to go ahead and use the lapping compound, just real gentle or real light, and then I'll finish it up with the 320 grit. So yeah, if they're worse than this, usually you got to do a little more lapping, and well, you want to go sparingly with this stuff. Just put a thin coat on the cup. Little goes a long way. Okay. And then these are marked top. And this is the bottom. Oh, excuse me. This is the bottom bearing, so this is the correct orientation. And I did a dry fit, and there was just a tiniest bit of rock. Make sure you got that seated in there nice and square. And it doesn't take a lot. That's probably enough right there. All right, now I'm going to clean this compound off really good. Let me do that off camera. Okay, you can see in there where the lapping compound was doing its thing, and we're going to finish it up with some 320 wet and dry with a little bit of solvent. Let me do the other one. Just get that lapping compound nice and even all the way around. And just need just a real thin coat. Okay. Now this time we had it that way. This time we're going this way because this is the top gear. So yeah, so the brass cone, it really doesn't get glazed unless it's really, really severe case. So the majority of your deglazing you want to do on the cups. Alright, so now I'm going to take my wet and dry, give it a little solvent or WD. I'm just using WD-40. Do the cup. And then just try to do a nice, even, doesn't take a lot, just got to break that glaze, and if it's got ridges, I've had them where you got to get those ridges smoothed out, or it can lock the unit into gear. Okay, let's take a look. That's good. That's all you need right there. Okay. I'll do the other one off camera. When we're all done, I'm going to thoroughly wash these. You don't want to have any of that grit or any lapping compound anywhere on these. Okay. Same with the cone. Before we continue, I want to point out a mistake. So when we were setting the preload on our pinion bearings, we ended up with 4.4, I think it was 4.4 pounds of turning resistance, according to the book. Okay, so here is the manual I was using, and I thought that was a little high. This is the 1987 service manual. Okay. And you can see here they call out between 3.67 and 7.3 pounds, and that's with new bearings, or 1.83 to 3.67 pounds with used bearings. So I looked further back in the book at the newer style that uses a crush sleeve, and it was only 2 pounds, which is what the number I'm used to. In the 1996 manual, they've changed it to 1 to 2.5 pounds, or if you have used bearings, between 0 and 1.1 pounds. So what happened? Let's go back to the original. So they're giving us the value in KP. Siri, convert 1 kp to pounds. 2.2. Here 1 kp is 7.3. So they had a conversion error. So, well, I've noticed this has loosened up since we did our testing at the press. So we're going to test it all again when everything's fully assembled, but I think we're going to be fine. Just something to be aware of if you got the older service manual. So off camera, I completely cleaned these and inspected our gears, and the gears are just in excellent condition, really good. Okay, and I thoroughly flushed these bearings out with solvent, and then I blew air through, but I didn't spin them. I just blew air through, reflushed, did that several times. So we're looking good. If you feel anything gritty at all, you got to keep cleaning. There's actually 2 rows of balls here. This is a double roller angular contact bearing. This is a really heavy duty bearing, and it's unusual for these bearings to fail. They're over capacity. And if they're rough, it's usually just because they've got some dirt in them. Okay, so they're both nice and clean, and I oiled them up. Everything feels really good. Gears look great. So we're ready to go back together. Okay, we're starting out with our bottom gear. It's always easy to tell which one's the bottom. This one's the top because it's got the wide wear mark, and this one's got the narrow wear mark. So this is the bottom gear. I've got our shims and our needle bearings that we took out during the disassembly. And we've got our bottom thrust washer. This is the thrust washer that came out. And these, I think I pointed out, these are a failure item. This one isn't too bad, but it does have some cupping. Okay, so it's distorted, all right? And they can get really bad. So we don't use these. We have our own steel version that we have made up. And then your keepers, you want to look at these keepers because one side will be worn from use, the other side will be unworn. So we're going to put the unworn side toward the thrust washer when we put it together. All right, well here we go. Here's our output shaft. That's where we start. And we're going to start with a little bit of oil on there, with a 90 weight. Okay, that goes in here like that. Got our 2 needle bearings. Get this where you guys can see. Drop 1 needle bearing in, 1 spacer, and the next needle bearing. Okay, and then give it a little bit of oil. Let that run down in there. Okay, all right, so here's where our thrust bearing goes. Give it a dab of oil also. Or thrust washer, I guess, not really a thrust bearing. Okay, so it goes on next. And these can be a really close fit. There we go, okay. Then you can put on your keepers, and I'm going to look at these with my magnifying glass to make sure I got them the right way. So I want the unworn side toward the thrust washer, like that. And the next one is going to go this way. Okay, all right. And I'm going to show you a trick here. These are pretty tight. Let me get a block of wood. All right, put that on a block of wood. A couple of hits. All right, that's seated down. And you want to make sure that your keepers are below the top surface. So that's all the way down. Doesn't hurt to hit it a few times. Make sure that's all the way down. Okay, all right. Now we go to our stand. Next is our shims. These are this is a 13 thousandths. Okay, our shim goes on there, like that. Now we're ready for the housing. Our housing's all nice and clean. We did a nice paint job on it. Slide the housing over. Take a look underneath. Just a little ways to go. There we go. Okay, we're all the way down. Okay. Okay, I'm going to put a little oil on the shaft. Okay, next is our spring, and sometimes you have to adjust these springs, so I'm going to put it on there. Okay, and then our cone clutch is next, and I'm going to give it a little oil inside and out. Okay, top, that goes up. And in with the cone clutch. Okay. We'll double check it when we get the top gear on, but you want this to float right in the middle. If it's sitting too low, you got to stretch that spring a little bit, but this looks pretty good. Our top bearing is next. And first thing we do is we get our shims out. And they're going to go on the bearing. like such. Okay. And you know what, I'm going to put just a little bit of oil. Just inside the housing. Help it slide on easier. Okay, shims are on there. I'm just kind of holding them with my fingers so they don't slide down. Top bearing and gear go in. It's a really close fit. There she goes. Perfect. Okay, that is all the way down. All right. Now our needle bearings are next. And we've got our top nut. On final assembly, we'll put a little bit of thread locker on here, but we have some checks to do first. I'm just going to put a dab of oil just to help that thread on there. Left-hand thread. Okay, 30mm socket. We're not going to give it final torque because we've got to do some measuring. Just get it good and tight. About like that, I'll do it. All right. Okay, before we check that clearance, I wanted to show you the cone clutch. So it should be floating right in between the two, just like that. If it's sitting too low like that, when it's floating, then you need to stretch that spring a little bit. If it's sitting too high, then your spring is stretched too much. Okay, this one's perfect. That's right where you want it. All right, we want to check our thrust clearance here, and I just did that off camera. So there's always one spot that's tighter. So this is our tightest spot back here, and we're at 20 thousandths right now. That's the max. Okay, the range is 4 thousandths to 20 thousandths. I like it in the middle, so I'm going to see if I can improve that a little bit. Shooting for like 10 to 12 would be ideal. Oh yeah, I didn't mention, if your clearance is too tight, make sure your bearings are seated all the way against the housing and your shims, and then also double check that the thrust washer, the little keepers, that they're seated all the way that we looked at earlier. Okay. All right, so I've got a collection of these nuts, and I think this is what the factory does. They have different thickness nuts, and they just, you know, put one on that gives them the correct clearance. So off camera, I'm going to try these and see if I can find one that gives us a better clearance. If not, I'll show you how to modify one. This is the one we started with, and it's not in the best condition. Most of these, I didn't put them all up here, most of them came out in the 17 thousandths area, and these two were way too tight. I think I'm going to use this one, and if we didn't have a way to modify them, I would just use that'd be okay. But if we can get this tighter, that'll help, because when you're shifting in and out of gear, the output shaft actually moves up and down, whatever that clearance amount is, and that's one of the things that's you know, puts extra load on this little thrust washer, you know, because it's hammering it every time it goes in and out of gear. All right, so what we're going to do, let me put you on the tripod. When you tighten this nut down, what it's doing, this little inner steel area here, that's what's contacting the end of the shaft. There's a square shoulder on the shaft. So what we're going to do, we're going to put this in the lathe, and we're going to take just a little bit of material just off that little edge right there, probably maybe 5 thou. Okay, I took about 5 thou off of that, and I've cleaned it and deburred it. Let's give it a try. Okay, so I've been checking this. This is our tightest area right here. So 11 goes, 12 thousandths. If I force it, 12 will go. So we're going to call that good. So it's probably about 11 and a half. So because we came up with a funny number when we calculated our shims, I'm going to do a pre-assembly without any of the O-rings in place of our pinion drive assembly, because we're going to have to put some gear marking compound on, check our gear pattern, then we got to take it all apart again, and hopefully for the final assembly. All right, so we're going to take our bearing box and gear, and we're going to find the pinion gear side shim. And we're going to put that on. And we already did a demo on this. I'm going to flip it this way. I like to put the thinnest one against the flange so that it's kind of protected. All right. That one goes that way, and then this side gets our clamp ring shims. Same thing, thinnest one down. Okay, it goes on that side. Okay. Got our little alignment pin. If your alignment pin is missing, don't worry about it. All you have to do is to make sure that you line up this oil hole with the steering bolt location. Okay, so it goes like that. Drop her down like that. All right. Next is our U-joint assembly. Well, not next, but let's just get it ready. Next is our seal washer and shims. Okay, make sure we got them all. All right. I'm going to put, even though we're going to take it apart again, I just don't want to do it dry. Put a little grease on there. Normally you'd have an O-ring on this side. We're not putting it on right now because we're going to be taking this apart again. Okay, that goes like that. You know what? It's not going to hurt anything to have that O-ring in there. There's a brand new O-ring. Let's go ahead and put it on there. Okay, there you go, O-ring. Okay, U-joint assembly. There we go. Got to hold your mouth just right for that. Okay, these shims drop down. I'm just going to leave these shims off for now. Well, they're staying now. All right, let me take this over to the vise. I'll bring you guys over. A couple of spacers. I got the center yoke clamped in the vise jaws, and that's to hold it so it doesn't turn while we tighten our pinion gear bolt here. And we're just gonna get it good and snug, about like that. That's probably around 40 foot-pounds, just guessing. We're gonna do Loctite and final torquing on that once we know everything is fitting correctly. Okay, back over to the bench. Okay, I did check our rotating resistance here, and it doesn't feel like it's changed any. The clamp ring wants to keep falling off of the bearing box because we don't have any O-rings or anything holding it in there. So just kind of, it's a little bit of a balancing act. I'm going to put a little oil on the bearing box here. I already put some on the inside of our housing. This is a really close fit, and if you try to do it dry, it's going to bind up on you. Well, I jumped the gun there. I forgot I wanted to put some marking compound on this gear. Now we can put it back in. All right, make sure our shims are clear. And get the gears to mesh. There we go. Okay. All right. And I got the bolts ready. I'm just putting a little bit of anti-seize on them right now. We're going to goop them up really good on the final. And don't forget your washers. Sometimes these washers get stuck on the ring. As long as you have them in there, okay? All right, I'm going to do this off camera. Okay, I got our bolts in and torqued down to 25 foot-pounds. I have not rotated our gears. I want to, and I can turn this and it won't rotate the gears. I want to try to check our backlash, or at least do a sanity check before we roll that marking compound through. Let me drop you guys down a little bit. Okay, I know it's hard to see in there. So upper gear, let me see if I can, I'm holding the U-joint assembly so the pinion doesn't rotate. Okay, can you hear that? Okay, so we have backlash, and just going by experience, that feels good. Now the forward gear is a little, not as easy to get in there. Let me see if I use a tool. There we go. See if I keep my hand out of the way. There it is. So it feels about the same as the other one, okay? All right. Let me see if I can get a dial indicator in there, or a test indicator. Okay, this is not easy to set up. I think I got it to where it'll read. Okay, there we go. So what do we got there? 6, 7, about 7 thousandths. The spec is between about 5, between about 5 and 10. And it depends on your gear ratio, but that's kind of the middle of the spec range. So yeah, we're good. I'm not going to try to do that on the bottom one. It's just going to be too hard. All right, well, it's pretty much mission impossible to try to do this bottom one. I might do it again once we're completely done. I can lay this thing on its side. We might be able to get in there and do it. So we're going to skip it for right now. Okay, so now I'm going to rotate clockwise the same way the engine turns, several turns, and then we'll see what our pattern looks like. All right, here we go. Trying to keep it steady pressure. These are all together. All right, let's see what we got. There we go. That's looking pretty good to me. We're in the middle of the tooth. We're down a little deeper, but I don't think we can do anything to adjust that. Okay, so that looks good. Now let's see, can we see the reverse gear? Okay, I made another revolution. Yeah, I'm happy with what I'm seeing. I know it's probably hard to see, but where we are getting a good pattern is in the middle of the tooth, and it's oval shaped. So I'm going to call that good. These never run in the other direction because they're directly coupled to the engine. But I might try rolling it backwards just to see how it looks. Okay, there's what we would call the coast pattern, and that actually looks pretty good too. I'm going to give it a good cleaning. This doesn't hurt anything. It's just colored grease is all it is. But yeah, we're going to clean it off anyways. Okay, we can put it together permanent now. I've cleaned off our threads with some acetone, and we're going to use some blue removable thread locker. And we're going to be careful not to overdo it because we don't want to get any down into the bearing. That's probably going to be plenty right there. "92 foot-pounds. Okay. I've got our bolts prepared. You want to coat these completely with Never Seez, including the washers. Just doing a little sanity check here. Remember, we found an error in the service manual on the preload rotating torque. Now we did go back in with the same washers, shim washers that we found from the factory, and this actually feels okay. I mean, it's maybe a smidge tighter than I would like it, but we do have a new bearing in there also. Okay, so we're going to go with that. Okay, we're going together permanent now. We already have this O-ring in place, and it still looks good. It's a brand new O-ring on our seal washer. Okay, we got our new O-rings. They're 3mm by 78mm, and now we're going to use a non-hardening sealer. Try not to make too big of a mess. Okay, and our shims are already on, still on there. All right, that goes on, and that is going to make contact with this surface here. So I'm going to put a little bit on there. Squish a little more out. There we go. Kind of separates in the tube a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to put got a little carried away there. I'll take some of that off. Okay, and I don't want it on that surface, but I do want it on this surface. That'll kind of help keep some of the elements out against that steel edge. Okay. All right, so then this goes back on there. like such. Okay, there's the O-ring going on. Okay. And I flip this over. All right, next O-ring. Pretty hard not to get this stuff all over you. Make sure your shims are down. Okay, that's in the O-ring groove. Okay, now we want to wipe off the excess. A little bit of acetone is your friend. Well, before I do that, I'm going to put a little bit, you guys see here, I'm going to put a little bit on this face also. Okay. Make sure you use a non-hardening sealer. The service manual says Permatex. Don't use Permatex RTV. That's not what they're talking about. The stuff in the manual is no longer available, the part number. Okay, U-joint assembly back in. Make sure your little O-ring is in place, and it is. Now our retaining bolt, I've already cleaned this with acetone as well. Red thread locker, permanent. About that much, don't overdo it. Okay, get it started. Okay, over to the vise. 55 foot-pounds is your tightening torque. Sorry, I had my arm right in the way. Okay. I'm going to put just a little bit of sealer on this beveled edge here. That's where the O-ring will start into the housing. Okay, like that. And just look at our O-ring, make sure it's got some on it. Don't want it on that part. Okay. All right, I think we're good. And then I'm going to put some more 90 weight on the bearing box. All right, this is ready to go in. And bolts. Trying to go fairly fast because that sealer, even though it's non-hardening, it still gets tacky and thicker. Okay, 25 foot-pounds is the magic number. do it in stages here, a little at a time. Okay. Check it one more time. Okay, now I'm going to clean off our mess. Okay, it's not easy to get an indicator in here, but I think I've got it set up so we can read our backlash. This is the forward gear. Just a little over 5 thousandths. Actually, there we go. Almost 7. I'm going to call it 7. All right, that's good. All right, we're ready to continue on here. We need to get this oil fill plug in there first. I got Ethan, the shop supervisor's back. Ethan, think you can handle that?
Yeah.
All right, do it. Okay, that's good. We don't need it super tight because it's got to come out again at some point to fill this up when it's a completed unit. I don't use any sealer on this. I just grease it really good. The O-ring's already greased. And just going to put a little bit on our mating surface here. Just to help prevent corrosion. All right, now we need the shifting paw or shifting fork. Spring goes in there like that. I'm going to oil this up. They do make different ones to change the clearance. Normally you don't need to change them unless you're assembling one out of parts, and you may have to experiment. Okay, all right. Now this bolt here, there's shims underneath this bolt, shim washers. This one's got 2 of them, okay? And that's how we adjust our shifting paw. So let's just try it the way it is. I'm going to grab another wrench. Snug that just slightly, okay. All right, so what we want to do now, well, first we can just play with it, see if our shifting works. All right, let's just do a test here first before we get too far along. Okay, so I'm going to go to forward, and there you go. See, it's turning the whole thing now, engaged. Back to neutral, okay. I'm going to go to reverse, and there we go. It goes the other way, okay. All right. Okay, so our shifting works, but what we want to do now is, when we looked at that before, we got those detents, and we want to find the high spot. Okay, so we want to turn our shifting lever to the high spot, and watch what happens here. You see it goes in, and then we get to where the detent is. When it goes into gear, it pulls back. So we want to be on that high point, which is like the high cam, right there, okay? All right, let me back you guys up. All right, so then when it's in that position, you want to rotate and feel for any, and you got to make sure you're going the right direction, okay? Make sure that we're not dragging, and what's happening is that paw is working its way around the shifting cone, and it's nice and smooth all the way around, okay? Now I'm going to go to the other side. Okay, and the direction you turn is important because it'll try to engage if you go the wrong way. See there? Put it back on this. Okay, so we're not getting any resistance or interference. So if we were feeling some drag, the shifting paw would be pushing too far in against the cone clutch, and we would want to add a shim to pull this bolt out a little bit farther. Okay. All right, I got both our shims back on here. Shim washers, spacers, I don't know, whatever you want to call them. So now for the final assembly, you want to put a little bit of sealer on these threads. Same thing, the non-hardening sealer. That's probably sufficient right there. When I got this unit, it did not have the top cover, so this is one that I just had in stock. So normally when you take them apart, there's going to be a shim sitting on top of the bearing, something like that, okay? And the purpose of that shim, it goes down in here, that takes up the space so that this cover can clamp the bearing down, but at the same time you want to leave enough space for a gasket that's going to go in here. Here's our gasket. So we need to calculate that gap, and it's supposed to be 4 thousandths. We're just going to, I just picked a random shim. We're going to start with this one and see what we got. All right, so this is going to go on here, and it can be a little bit of a snug fit to get it all the way down. So what's a good idea is just to go ahead and put in your screws. Can you put that one in? And then we're not going to torque them, we're just going to go finger tight, is usually all it takes. Just to make sure that that's sucked all the way down. You could probably tap it down with a rubber mallet, but this is a little more civilized to do it this way. Okay, and now I'm going to loosen them back off. Okay, now my assistant Ethan has got a 4 thousandths feeler gauge, and he's going to go around and see if we have the 4 thousandths gap. Kind of looking like it's a little tight, huh? Mm-hmm. You want to check the other side when you turn it around?
It's a little loose over here.
A little loose in the front, mm-hmm. And it's never perfect all the way around. That won't go at all?
Nope.
Okay.
It's tight here, but loose there.
Can we even see a gap? Maybe a little.
Yeah, just
okay.
a little.
Why don't we try a thinner feeler gauge? Let's try maybe a 2 thousandths. Here, let me help you with that. So just slide them out like this. Okay. And let's find you a 2 thou. There's a 3. How about a 2.5?
Okay.
Okay, there you go. Use that one. See if you can get that one in anywhere. Still pretty tight?
Yeah.
Okay, let's check the other side. That one goes? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we only need a small amount added then. All right. Okay, so off camera, we're going to take this off. We're going to measure that shim, and then try to pick out another shim that's roughly another 2/1000 thickness. Alright, I've been fiddling around with this. I think this is as good as we're going to get it. So here's a 3 thou. It gets tight right there. On this side, here's 4 thou. It's loose, but not real loose, and it gets tight back here. Good. Yeah, these covers are just cast, so they're not real flat. All right, we're going to call that good. We're going to take it back off, and we've got the gasket to put in. Okay, make sure your shim is still there. Get your new gasket. And you got an oil return hole. It's this one right here, so you got to line that up with that one. And I just do these rubber flat gaskets. I do them dry. No sealer, no oil, nothing, just dry. Make sure it's sitting flat. Okay, our shim is there. And then on with our cover. All right. This O-ring, I'm going to grease that. And since this one is the oil return, I'm just going to use a little grease on the threads only. It's hollow down the center, okay? That one goes in. The other three, you could probably just use grease, but I'm going to put a little anti-seize on the other ones. Okay, let me get a torque wrench. Okay, these don't take much. 12 foot-pounds. Okay. Well, that's pretty much it. The dipstick was missing also, so luckily I had a spare one. And these two O-rings are when it mates up to the intermediate housing, so those go with it. Oh yeah, one last thing. Even though we already greased these when we assembled them, we'll give them one pump each. There we go. My grease gun is cold. It's not flowing very well. All right. Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, this is probably going to end up being for sale. I do have some lower units. I could build up a complete drive, so I mean that's an option. Yeah, but more than likely I'm probably just going to sell the upper. Yeah, I don't have anybody locally looking for one, and this was just a spare unit that we had. That was missing a couple things, and we were able to obtain the missing parts and build up a nice unit. All right, well, thanks guys. Yeah, I tried to capture as much detail as I could without making the video too long. It still ended up being way longer than I was planning on. So yeah, if you made it this far, congratulations and thanks for viewing. If you found it useful, please hit that thumbs up button. That really helps. And if you got any questions, just throw them in the comments. And if you want that spreadsheet that I use to calculate the shim thicknesses, just shoot me an email. I'll send it to you. I'll put my email down here somewhere, and it's also in the video description. Alrighty, thanks again, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye now. Guys, I need to free up some space. I don't have that much storage area. So I'm selling these lowers dirt cheap, and I mean dirt cheap. Okay, so these first three are 280s, and they're 215 gear ratio. This one here is the most complete one. Okay, and I think they're all 280s, single prop. All right, and then I've got this one down here. This one's a 270. It's got the matching intermediate section, and this one's a 195 gear ratio. And I've also got a couple of intermediate housings if anybody needs any. I'll probably end up just sending those to scrap, but yeah, I'm tired of having to move these around all the time and take up a lot of room, so I want to get them out of here. If you're interested, just shoot me an email. My email is always in the description of the video.